When you're browsing the shiny stones in your local museum gift shop, there's a few staples you can expect to find. Pointy white quartz crystals, purple amethyst, shiny golden pyrite, and this, layered brown tiger's eye, winking at you with its classic cat's eye reflection. Since these stones are like everywhere, you might assume that we know everything there is to know about them. But it turns out that for over a century, we were completely wrong about how tiger's eye formed and even what it's made of. Here's how we got there and the research that finally helped us crack the case. That is a pun that you're gonna get in a minute. Tiger's eye is the name commonly given to this gorgeously golden brown banded form of quartz. What really sets it apart from the other rocks on the shelf is its silky reflection, which creates a line of light moving across its polished surface that looks like the narrowed slit of a cat's eye. It's a phenomenon known as chatoyancy, which is similar to the asterism in things like star emeralds or rubies. The stone is made up of ultra-fine fibers, all lined up so they catch the light together and create a single band of reflected light. That chatoyancy has made tiger's eye super popular among collectors, and many people carry some around for good luck, including our director Hiroka. But while the mechanics of light reflection might be well understood, the chemistry and geological history of these gemstones hasn't always been so straightforward. Their story begins in the late 1800s when samples of tiger's eye were incredibly rare and highly prized. At that time, tiger's eye was reportedly worth 35 times its weight in gold, but nobody had done much scholarly work on what it was made of. That was until Ferdinand Weibull took up the task. Weibull was a German chemist who used scientific chemistry to study ancient materials, so he was the perfect guy to investigate the mineralogical mysteries of tiger's eye and its blue cousin, hawk's eye. Weibull noticed that the fibrous texture and color of hawk's eye looked very similar to another mineral called chrysotolite, also known as blue asbestos. And if you're wondering, yes, it is that asbestos. In nature, chrysotolite is blue and fibrous, just like hawk's eye, which is probably where Weibull got the idea. But based on the mineral's hardnesses and specific gravities, it was clear that hawk's eye was composed of quartz, despite looking just like chrysotolite. So based on all that, Weibull concluded that hawk's eye formed when quartz had replaced existing chrysotolite material, changing the stone's chemistry while maintaining its original asbestos texture. According to Weibull, the blue hawk's eye represented a partial replacement, with residual chrysotolite trapped inside, giving the gem its blue color. Tiger's eye then represented a full replacement, with the brown color created as the original mineral was broken down. On the face of it, this was a pretty sensible idea, since this kind of thing, known as pseudomorphism, happens pretty frequently in geology. The most obvious example is fossils. When you're looking at an ancient dinosaur bone, most of the time what you're really seeing is a rock that replaced all the living bone bits with hardened minerals. This is how we get ammonites made of pyrite and petrified wood, which is mostly silica. But pseudomorphism isn't just for fossils. We spot them in rocks when the shape of a crystal doesn't match up with what you'd expect from its chemical makeup. For instance, pyrite can pseudomorph into the iron oxide minerals limonite and goethite, making cube-shaped crystals that are composed of minerals that don't usually like to be cubes. So Weibull's pseudomorphic origin for hawk's eye and tiger's eye, published in 1873, made tangible and theoretical sense. It was accepted by the scientific community and repeated in mineralogical guides and textbooks for more than 125 years. The thing is, nobody ever actually checked if it was true. Weibull gets a pass since he wasn't working with a lot of high-tech tools, but at no point in the decades that we've had chemical probes or super-powered microscopes did anyone think, hey, should we actually look at whether this hypothesis from the 1800s is true or not? Until 2003, when researchers from Penn State used modern high-res imaging techniques to finally take a closer look at tiger's eye. And they found that one of Weibull's core assumptions had been flat out wrong. The quartz in the tiger's eye bands wasn't fibrous at all, but laid out in chunky, elongated columns. The crystals were up to 1 millimeter across and 10 millimeters long, and while that's not exactly massive, that's still way thicker than the asbestos fibers of chrysotolite. So it didn't make sense that these were a search-replace pseudomorph for chrysotolite, and those quartz crystals grew that way all on their own. And yet, weirdly, they did still find some inclusions of that chrysotolite. Hawk's Eye had more and Tiger's Eye had less. The inclusions occurred in sequences of short fibers around 100 millimeters long, which were often, but not always, oriented parallel to the lengths of the quartz columns. And when those two directions differed, the Tiger's Eye chatoyancy reflection was at right angles to the fibers, not the quartz crystals, so they could tell it really was the chrysotolite that caused the silky reflection after all. So, what's going on? The 2003 researchers proposed that Tiger's Eye formed under what they call a crack seal process in areas affected by large-scale tectonic forces. That's the pun from the beginning. You start with a pre-existing rock that contains some chrysotolite. That rock is contorted by massive tectonic stress, then it cracks, creating a gap that's then filled by quartz-rich fluids circulating deep underground. Quartz crystals grow into the cracks and create thin quartz veins, and any chrysotolite fibers that had bordered those cracks grow into the empty spaces. As a result, you get quartz crystals surrounding the fibrous inclusions. But tectonic forces aren't often a one-and-done kind of thing. The stress continues and the vein cracks again, allowing more quartz and chrysotolite to grow into the space, with quartz trapping the thin asbestos fibers. This happens repeatedly, and the cracks grow incrementally, as little as 1/10 of a millimeter at a time. It can take 100 separate cracking events to build up a 1 centimeter thick vein of Tiger's Eye. Within this vein, the chrysotolite inclusions form a trail anchored into the original rock that preserves a history of the cracking events. If the veins open up straight, then the inclusions stay aligned with the quartz. But if there's any sideways motion, then the asbestos fibers end up in a sort of staircase shape. Through high-resolution microscopy, these textural relationships have been revealed for the first time, and they fit with the wider geological setting for where Tiger's Eye is found in places like South Africa and Australia. Both of these regions have experienced a ton of folding and faulting in their tectonic histories. For instance, South Africa's Cape Asbestos Field was involved in 2 major mountain building events around 2 billion years ago, which involves a ton of geological pressure, enough to crack rocks again and again. So in a very real way, the smallest scale structures in these gemstones are a cat's eye reflection of the ancient large-scale tectonic events that formed them. By the way, if all this talk of asbestos has you side-eyeing the Tiger's Eye on your shelf, don't stress. Asbestos fibers only cause problems when they're breathed in, and those columns of quartz in there keep the asbestos fibers fully contained. As long as you aren't like grinding it into a powder, Tiger's Eye is totally safe. Which is great news because SciShow Rocks box subscribers can look forward to receiving their own piece of shimmering Tiger's Eye this month. Every month, our subscribers receive a hand-picked mineral or fossil specimen, perfect for display, and we also offer some of the fan-favorite minerals for purchase a la carte. So head over to complexly.store/rocks to check it out.